we really talk about like keeping things simple, putting people first. These are elements that are weaved into our culture. We talk about being nimble. We talk about being almost scrappy but
Yeah.
scaling quickly.
Hmm.
And so it's okay to fail, to iterate and so forth, but please learn from it. And then let's get a better product out to market. And so these are elements that I think are very foundational to how the business was built.
Hey, Katya, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Pleasure to be here, Chris.
I suppose that you can see you. You look very artistic today. I feel
Oh,
like
I do.
you're.
I
I feel
feel
like you're about to paint me an amazing portrait. You know, I feel like
I do.
you're giving
I
me that
feel
vibes.
yes. Well, yes, exactly. I'm like, well, it's Tuesday. It's like a couple days before Halloween, so I'm a Scorpio, so I love this month.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was in the US and I didn't realize how big Halloween was. Like
Oh, it's
it's like we were in New Jersey doing an event at Merck, and then we went over to Miami, and I was like, wow, like people really go all out for Halloween compared to the
yes,
UK. London's just not really a big Halloween place, but I feel like it's a
it's
bit of a shame
growing.
because I see the kids' smiles on their faces and the house is full of lights, and I'm like, how much electricity are you paying this month for that? But it looks really cool to do that.
I was walking my dog the other morning, and it's dark now, with the obviously the fall and the winter coming.
Yeah,
The people in our neighborhood, they really do decorate, and they have like some of the houses have, the cemeteries and the
no
feet path.
way.
And the dog is like barking at them at 6 in the morning. I'm like, it's not a rabbit.
Yeah, dogs don't like masks either. Anyone who's got a dog knows that just don't put a mask on near the dog. I don't know about yours, but my dog did not appreciate people coming with masks to our door, knocking on the door as well. Apart from that, how are you? How are things personally? How are you?
Personally, professionally, things are good. It's a very busy time, both personally and professionally. We wrap up our fiscal year, so we are having an intense year, been on the road a lot, but it's all like kind of like a happy good. So that's excellent. I just looking forward to kind of winding down the calendar year and getting a bit of rest and recharge as we forge into 2025.
Yeah. I was speaking to a sister last week and they were saying to me, Chris, it's organized chaos, but you have to understand when you're in or you're out of sprints, if that makes sense. So like
Yes.
when they're in a sprint, as long as you know you're in a sprint, you can prepare for the workload, the long hours, the amount of stress. But it's when you don't realize you're in a sprint and it's like that then things can kind of get a bit too much and overwhelming, if that
And
makes sense.
absolutely. And I would add to that, I think it's when you're in a sprint and you know that your work has impact and you're moving the needle,
Mm.
you'll keep engaged. But if you're working and you're spinning and it's not going anywhere, that's where it can be quite
Yeah.
detrimental.
So you said it a lot better than me. That's what I was trying to get across. But you were like, Chris, I live it, so I can I can do that. Tell everyone a bit more about the company because I know the company very well. It's been a fascinating story journey. I saw was it Series C or D? I'm forgetting now,
See,
which was one of the biggest Series
yes.
C's ever in history, if I recall on the news. Talk to everyone a little bit about the business.
Sure. So, 1Password, we are a cybersecurity company, very much Canadian roots, founded by four founders, two couples, just outside of the Toronto area about 18 plus years ago.
Wow.
So, bootstrapped company. And as you probably knew it from the beginning, it was basically a consumer application,
Yes.
and they were trying to solve the problem of you having like all these post-it notes or you can buy those books with you put your passwords in, and I mean, major security issues. And they built an application on Apple or Mac at the time, Mac
Yeah.
platform. And then it just really took off over the years from a consumer application on a number of platforms. And then about 2019, they decided to do their first round of funding. 2020, early 21, second round. And as you say, Series C, end of 21, largest fundraise in Canada at the time, and really shifted into B2B. So today, we are a multi-product identity security company. We really take care of people, keeping people safe. We are in 5 countries. We're tracking around 1,400 employees and growing very, very rapidly. And really, we're there really how I kind of say it in layperson's terms is remote work and the hybrid workplace of pre-COVID. Everyone's bringing their devices, personal, some work related. And so everything you bring into the workplace produces, I call it a gap. So you have like little bubbles in the funnel, and we're protecting all those little holes once you log in, because once you log in, that's where the hacks can happen and
There's
so
so
forth.
many.
So
Yeah,
it's very, very important, both on personal and professional. So B2B, B2C company, high growth, and growing and very global.
I'll tell you a funny story, and only you will probably and a few people appreciate. Was at Merck doing our event at the Merck Pharmaceuticals HQ in New Jersey last week.
Oh,
60
that's right.
with 60
Yes. Yes.
CHROs, and we had a panel where the CEO, Chief Technology Officer, CTO, and Chief Diversity Officer was sharing around how they're sort of using AI and the relationship between CHRO, CTO, how they're getting AI embedded, etc. Right? And I had recorded that session, and I had a hard drive. And they said, "Oh, the only way we can get that hard drive is if we send it to our Google Cloud, and we can then send it to you." And I said, "Can I plug my hard drive into your computer?" Imagine saying that to the chief technology officer. He was like, "No, you can't put your hard drive into my computer." And then it clicked in my head, and I was like, "What?" Like, to your point, like a perfect example of if someone brings in
I'm very glad they said that.
perfect example of no, you can't plug your personal hard drive into our work computer, Chris. And I was like, oh yes,
Yes.
that makes complete sense. But these are things, a lot of these things, people don't even realize they're doing, right?
No, not at all. It's all natural. And
Yeah,
so our solution is to protect that, because you want to keep the ease of, working with multiple apps and so forth, but you have to find a way to protect. So it is it's just a growing business.
yeah. Well, so fast growing business right now. What's top of mind for you? What are you most passionate about right now?
I think from our standpoint, or from my standpoint on the people front, it's continuing to scale in a healthy, sustainable way. So there's this kind of longevity piece to the business. It's been around for 18 plus years. We want it to be around, obviously, much, much longer. And I think that you do that while you grow in a very prudent and resourceful way. And you take care of the people along the way. So, I mean, people do talk about it, and maybe they roll their eyes and say, well, people are the foundational element. But yeah, we have a phenomenal tech stack, but that tech stack is only as good as the people who are taking care of it. And then obviously taking care of the product and bringing it to market, and then supporting all the enterprises and consumers that we have out there. And so, our foundation of people is a very important lever. It's also very cultural for us in terms of how the business was built. I alluded to the two couples who were our founders originally, or still are, but who actually built the business. And then we brought in our CEO, Jeff Shiner, and now we have our full C-suite. And I think, everyone has people at the heart of it, because we can't do what we're doing without the talent we have.
Yeah. How do you, a big challenge, many leaders I speak to in your position faces, and companies, founders, how do you then maintain that culture and innovation that got you where you are as you grow?
I think it's an evolution. I don't think you can say, well, this was the culture in 2005 when the company was founded, and we just have to basically mirror it. I mean, things change. Look at the whole era of COVID. I think things pushed us dramatically to think differently. Look at AI, what's happening now. So I always say that the most important thing is taking those core pieces of the culture, and those are like non-negotiables. And from there, there's other things that evolve. And so,
So what would they be?
well,
What would some of the non-negotiables be that these are fundamental to our success?
we really talk about like keeping things simple, putting people first. These are elements that are weaved into our culture. We talk about being nimble. We talk about being almost scrappy, but
Yeah.
scaling quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay to fail, to iterate and so forth, but please learn from it. And then let's get a better product out to market. And so these are elements that I think are very foundational to how the business was built. So continually thinking about innovation, iteration, being with the market. I mean, for us, just moving from consumer product to an enterprise product, and then a product that is foundational as a password manager, but then understanding how you live the evolution to enterprise, and that the enterprise needs a much more sophisticated
Yeah.
product that has different variables to it. I think these are all things that culturally weave themselves through in terms of that growth story, and so we're very proud of what we've built, and but we're very open to feedback, open to change. But there's like these fundamental elements, like being a remote first company. We're 18 years being remote, so that's quite unique.
Wow.
The company was founded as a remote company, so we're not one of those COVID stories of
Yeah.
going remote and staying remote. And so all that weaves into the culture as kind of a do not touch those parts and honor those parts, and then be open to change from there.
Yeah. How do you do that in a practical sense, though? Are you talking about this during the onboarding, the pre-boarding? Are you kind of weaving it into the day to day? Like, how do you ensure that that shows up and is part of people's, in the flow of work, as it were?
The word I use a lot is intentional. And I was actually just talking to my team the other day because I think we're very, even just our onboarding is quite unique. When I started, they were like, okay, Katya, you start on a Wednesday. I'm like, Wednesday? Why would I start on a Wednesday? Like normally you just kind of
It's
traditionally start
true.
on
Like
Monday.
default to Monday, right? Like as tradition.
Yes, just a calendar. And they're like, oh, no, 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 no. This is a remote company. There's a lot to do. You're going to be overloaded by the types of tools and the information that you have. So we're going to give you kind of a 3-day full onboarding of what to expect from a tools, a culture, a people standpoint. And then you'll be able to take the weekend,
Ah,
digest it, and be ready to go. And so we have all obviously iterated as the time has gone on our onboarding, but there are things that are very important. We have all still at 1,400 employees. We have them all meet our founders. They are very passionate about the business, so they can understand like how this
so
business was
every single
built.
employee has met the founders.
Oh yes,
Wow.
and they're regularly on all company all hands with us as well. I think those are things that are you talk about the cultural piece. Those are important things to honor and keep.
What are some of the other things that you do during the onboarding that is one, to make successfully onboard remote employees that you would say these are super important that people need to know?
Well, we take them through kind of the norms and the cadence of how we work. So we have a whole, Notion. We have a whole Notion page about, where to find all the information. We actually have one onboarding ambassador. We do have a backup, but he is really our ambassador. He's been with us for over a decade. He knows the company inside out. And so it's really the first individual that all employees meet.
Really? So you have an
And
onboarding
it's
ambassador dedicated.
well, we don't, this is my name for our
It's a
onboarding
good name.
ambassador. But I do call him that because he does represent um, the past, the present, and the future. And so I think that that's also very important. And so it's not like a sausage machine where we're churning things through. We do have our communication prior to someone starting, then when they're starting, and he kind of like weaves through the whole first few weeks. We do very structured checklists about what people need to know. And we keep getting better at it because it's an evolution of what's changing, and the information is a lot as we scale. And so yeah, we're just very intentional about what we need to tell people, what we do async, what we don't do async, what we do, face to face, because that's very important in a remote company.
Yeah, I love that. I remember years back I was speaking to, I think it was a head of remote work for like GitHub because they have kind of their
Yes,
famous case
absolutely.
study, right? And he
Yes,
was there and he was like, document everything.
yes.
I remember that's
I've seen that.
the first thing he said to me. I was like, I don't think it sunk in at the time when he said it to me. And I was like, and then we went obviously through COVID, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yes.
Like, you really have to have this is how we work, the way we work, how we do work, how we measure work, literally everything laid out for
Yes,
people.
they really set the bar. actually, that they have a whole playbook,
And they
which I
gave it
think
away, right?
it's
They
phenomenal.
open
And we should,
sourced. Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And
I have looked at it. Yeah,
you do find that in the tech sector, which I think is phenomenal. I come from very, very varying industries, and I think what's unique about the tech space is that it is a community. People share. You can learn from one another. It's fast paced, and I think that is, even what we're doing in the diversity, equity, inclusion space, we share a lot with our community because you can only get better by sharing. It's not, I don't think it's IP. It's like
it's not an us
let's
and it's
let
not an us and them, right? It's a we.
exactly.
Yeah, it's important. We just had our global DEI summit a few weeks ago, and it was incredible. We had 1,600 heads of DEI, chief diversity officers, come together, and it was just unreal to see everyone come together and share. And just, as I said, no, there was competitors. You had people, direct competitors on the same panels, just sharing everything as well.
Yes.
It's so refreshing. It was amazing.
Yes.
And
And it's an excellent topic for that because you can only be as good as you are. You should not be,
yeah,
wearing blinders in that perspective. You really need to be open to what's going
it
on.
goes
And
against everything. If you're in DEI and that's your perspective, it
exactly.
kind of goes against the entire purpose. How is it being a chief people officer in a fully remote? What advice would you give to other chief people officers thinking about going into a company that has a fully remote? Because it might, I don't know, maybe you're saying it's completely same, Chris, or how has that changed? Is this the first time you've worked in a fully remote company?
Yes, I mean, in COVID, prior to 1Password, I was at a company that obviously left the office one day and eventually started to return to work. But this was the first time I've worked in a fully intentional remote company. And I think even before I talk about the advice for other CHROs, I was just chatting with my staff the other day. And, as you evolve, we refine, we get better at what we do. We have a full complement of talent acquisition, a full team, and we do obviously quite heavy recruitment. And I keep saying we need to be even more intentional about what it means to work here because it is remote and not everyone can adapt to that. And so I said, you need to give people, I call it in the olden days, it was called the realistic job preview. I'm sure there's a fancier name now, but really tell them, hey, this is what's great about this company. This is what you might want to think about because you need to really be
I love that.
informed when you come in. And so the importance of being direct, being factual, and not beating around the bush about what it means. And so coming back to your question on just advice on the HR leader front, there's a positive in terms of the flexibility, in terms of the pace and the innovation, because remote I think goes quite quickly. And the reason I say that very tactically is because your meetings are short. Like, yes, we sometimes have these all day remote meetings, which I think are sometimes very draining, but your meetings are actually relatively short compared to what you might have in office. So you
Yeah,
have to think quickly, and then you have time to digest and so forth. But I think we have the best of both. We do not have offices, but we have a space of which we have built out of Toronto, which is really where kind of the company was formed. And we call it our collaboration space because we want to bring people together. And so when you have a blend of remote work and then face to face for strategic and innovative
yeah.
thinking, it's not like I show up, I swipe my card to get a coffee, and I sit at my desk. And so if you're trying to do remote well, it's a blend of that. It's a blend of that in-person time that makes sense,
But intentional, and like you said, intentional
very
in
intentional.
person for collaboration, innovation, creative. Yeah,
And strategy, setting your budget
strategy.
planning,
Hmm.
OKRs, and so forth. Now, other part is you need to mind yourself. I mean, I just came back from 6 days on the road. And when you work remotely, you have time to kind of do these mini recharges. And when you are in person, it can be draining because it's a
You're
very, very
always
different,
on. Yeah,
you're always on. You have your meetings and then you have your evening activities and so forth. So I think that I say, even coming back to the talent acquisition piece, I say to the recruitment team, please check, do people understand what it means to be remote? Because if they don't understand it, they won't be
I love
successful
your
here.
honesty, by the way. I love that because it
Well,
may seem counterintuitive, you know, and people are, oh, we're losing out on talent. No, because
yes.
they're going to leave anyway.
They are, and we were debating it the other day on because I think they found me very like, and I said, no, you need to tell them like
Yeah,
like it's our responsibility. If you hire someone and you give them like a false view and on all these, we call it like a flowery view of everything. Life is not like that. There's like some really interesting pieces, and then there's some hard pieces, and so I just want people to know what they're getting into. So if it's not working, then I can actually very safely say, I gave you the realistic job preview. So I think that's
I
important.
think that makes you more attractive to those people. Because how often would they go into a meeting with a hiring manager or recruiter who says, this is the reality and this may not be for you? Because that just builds even more trust. Because that person's being like, wow, here's this company being so transparent with me and open and being honest. That's the kind of company I want to work for. So I feel like it kind
Well,
of it will make people feel, you know, some recruiters might be like, oh, I'm going to lose this candidate I've been working really hard on. But in reality, you're
yes.
actually building more trust.
And managers who are nervous because they're looking for talent. But
Yeah,
I'm saying you need to be very realistic, because if you do a hire that doesn't work for you mutually or either way, you're kind of actually losing time as well from a business perspective. And so that intentionality, I think, is very critical. One best practice that I do with all my own personal hiring is, obviously we go through the recruitment process, and when we get down to kind of finalists, I have a very, very realistic discussion about, we're going to make you an offer. You need to know what you're getting into, and be very clear. And then it actually puts the onus back on them to think about, is this the right place
love
for
it.
me?
I honestly love that so much because like there's companies even I've joined in the past that have given me the dream, sold me the dream. Right, we've all had it. You go in,
There's no dream in life, Chris. You know that.
yeah, but yeah,
It's
setting expectations of what this is and isn't
Yes,
is because they're gonna find out. As I said, they're gonna find out anyway. Whether it's them the hard way on the job, they're gonna find there's a thing called social media exists. There's Glassdoor. There's all these
yes,
things, right? That happens as
yes.
well. But that's the last thing you want to do because
Well, and
the
it's your job to turn that dream into a dream,
mm,
because that's as an employer or someone being hired, I think it's incumbent on understanding what you're getting into, and then turning that into a positive that is rewarding for yourself.
yeah. What message would you give to all of those companies right now that are reverting completely back to in office? We're seeing this huge wave. Like, you know, there was like a mini wave in the beginning of the year with sort of the Facebooks and the others that all sort of went. And now, every day, I'm hearing another very large organization saying it's not working, even though the data doesn't say that. We're going straight back into the office. What message would you give to them?
Well, I like you. I just saw a survey on LinkedIn the other day. I don't know the statistical relevance of it, but it was something like, the headline was 93% of CEOs expect full FULL return to work in the next 2 years. And I think that life is different. I'm not against, obviously, hybrid work. Remote work is particular for the industries. If you're working in manufacturing and
Yeah,
you're
of
beside
course.
if
Yeah.
you're beside a plant and you need to be there for the product, that's really important. But I think that the flexibility is very attractive. And so I think you can do the mix of both. And it's also about treating your employees like adults. And again, it comes back to that intentionality. If I was at the beginning of the hiring process and I was responsible for a function, or sorry, a HR function in a company that was hybrid, I would be very clear on what my expectations are at the beginning with that candidate. So there's just no false understanding.
Yeah.
And I think we are, painting a brush broadly, that is probably, in the supply and demand for talent right now, okay to do, because the market has shifted. We're not in 2022 where it's tight,
I
tight,
was going to
tight.
ask you that. What would you think the impact's going to be? Because before, in that market, you previously just said it would be like you're going to lose a lot of talent. But what do you think now?
Exactly. Well, now you've got this shift, and I say it a lot. We had something like 200,000 resumes that came to us in 2023, and we're tracking that a bit higher than that this year. And so we have a lot of talent pool, but it can quickly change. And so you're making those commitments now. And so you're kind of the companies are being very rigid in their structure, and they're not flexible enough to pivot. And that can actually long term be difficult for the business.
Yeah. What do you think's driving it?
Um, I think there's some personal experiences people have. We all bring personal experience. We all bring bias to the workplace. I was just on a call actually the other day. I also do some board work as well. It's, where I want to land in my future career, and I'm on a relatively large company from a board perspective. And I was talking to the CEO, and we were talking about, a very, very senior search for a role and how we would put a committee together. And one of the individuals on the committee, we would like them obviously to be part of the interview process. And the answer was, well, this person is remote. Like we need them to meet in person. And I said, I think we can do both. We can set it up to be successful, and not have to, fly in the individual for, I don't know, a couple thousand, $3,000 with all the expenses. And I think that we can set up an interview process that is hybrid.
Yeah.
And so we have to challenge that notion, because we were doing it for a few years in COVID. I think it probably went to the extreme from an engagement and productivity perspective where we lost some. And now I think you can actually have the best of both.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, right? In the DEI one, everyone brings their backpack of beliefs with them, as well, and it's easy to revert back to what was comfortable. If you've been doing something for
Yes.
20, 30 years the same way, it's very difficult. I told a story, like I was just before the pandemic, I was chatting to a CHRO, and she was like, we've got this plan over the next 10 years to move 5,000 of our call center reps remotely, right? 10-year plan, right? Happened in like 2 weeks. So, we had a call a few weeks later because of the pandemic, right?
Right.
So we
It
had
was just a catalyst.
we had a call after, and we was both just laughing, saying we just did a podcast where you said you got this plan and it couldn't be done, and and she was like, it's done. Literally, it was done. It
Exactly.
was done.
Yes, those are some of the positives, is you just accelerated things,
Yeah,
and then now you can go back and you can just think about, okay, what are the tweaks and adjustments we might need to make it even better.
yeah. Before I let you go, what would you say is your parting piece of advice for those HR leaders of tomorrow? Because the role has changed so much. I've been doing this for 20 years, since I was 17. I'm 37 now. It's just crazy that I just realized I'm doing it for 20 years.
Two
And
decades. You should say decades. It seems
it
longer.
sounds, does that sound better? All right, okay, I'll change this to 2 decades. Yeah, I was like, wow, I like feel really old right now, and I'm even doing it, and it's almost unrecognizable from when I started to where we are now. What advice would you give to those leaders that are going to be sitting in the CPO role one day?
I think it was I was talking to I've talked about this quite a bit, about the whole concept of resilience, and how I think that the profession has fundamentally changed over the last, I'd say, 4 to 5 years. And you have to choose if you want to be in this profession, and if it motivates you, because it can be very challenging. So my advice is you need to use resilience in a way that is motivational for you. You will go through some very, very challenging times, but just like you were saying at the beginning, is, you might be very, very busy and on these sprints, but if you're making impact and you're influencing, that shows a level of resilience and also a level of engagement. And so resilience, influence, being very direct and factual, and being really clear about what the expectations are, I think are elements that are really, really critical for the role. It's not like you just work in this box and you do programs and policies and so forth. Like the role the role has this cascade effect throughout the business, and I think it's essential. So
Yeah.
those three areas I think would be very, very important to focus on. Very soft, but also at the same time very important to develop as a leader,
Yeah.
not just HR, leaders in general.
100%. On very quickly on that resilience piece, how do you find that balance between that and looking after your own personal well-being?
I
Because
think
that,
it is very, very, very independent to every individual. And I think that the way you might um, take care of yourself is different than me. There is no vanilla bread and butter, peanut butter approach. And I think that people need to dig deep into themselves and say, what relaxes me, what takes my mind off work, what really grounds me. And yoga might be one for, it's just an extreme example. Yoga might be one for someone, and then I don't know, running an Ironman might be something for someone else. And so you have to find what is good for you. And so what we try and do I think when we were first kind of on this journey on mental health and balance, it was always like, just do this. I'm like, no, I think these are all elements, and you yourself have to decide what is best. And I think it takes time, and 5 years ago it was different, and today it's a different combination for me, and
Yeah.
it evolves.
So you doing yoga and marathons? Is that what you're saying?
No, these days I started to do a lot of running back in
Oh, nice.
2016 up until actually the beginning of the year, and now I've actually flipped, and now I'm just a Peloton. I just love
Oh,
the Peloton.
you're one of those. Shane, my co-founder, is one of those. You're like, it's like a cult.
Oh, it's very inspirational, and
Yeah.
the instructors are just like they're
I
my
should say
my
tribe. Cult sounds a bit extreme. Your tribe.
yeah, yes,
Your
the tribe.
tribe. Your tribe.
So
Yeah.
it's like you need to find what's best for you is kind of the
Yeah.
conclusion
No,
of
I
that.
agree. Like for me, I used to, I had a tough couple of years. The pandemic was tough. I suffered from anxiety attacks and kind of was very overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do. And for me, it could be as simple as just playing some computer games
Yes,
and just
absolutely.
escaping from the world for a
Yes.
second, right?
It's like
Or
a good Netflix
yeah,
series.
like it doesn't have to be too extreme. Or I just took some time after the Merck event to spend some time with my wife in Miami, and we had no plans.
Well, that's nice.
So we just went there, and we were like, "What do we do?" Like we had nothing planned for the entire week, and then we made that sort of
Every day
detached.
you make a
Yeah,
plan.
yeah, and we intentionally didn't plan anything, so we could just discover what we're gonna do and just let flow where. And that was it. That was enough for me to kind of re-energize. To your point, after 2 days in person, which was quite exhausting.
Yes.
So back to
When
your point, I hadn't been in person environment for 2 solid days, all day, every day, and I was like, whoa, kind of feeling a bit exhausted after that. So, but listen, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story, and congratulations to you and the team. I followed the story and the journey. Shane, my co-founder, was like, "Oh, isn't that company that had the really big race series?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is." It's, all right, how it's just it's crazy. Even we kind of know that. And I've been a user of the product in the earlier days as a personally as well.
Yes.
And I had no idea that you were fully remote. By the way, this entire time. So that's incredible what you and the founders have achieved. So I appreciate you coming on the show, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure being on the show and getting to know you personally. And yeah, take good care. I'll be following you.
Thanks.